I'm really happy to be here. It's really hard to follow all of the speakers who spoke before me and to sort of come in after the tea break. So how's everyone feeling? Yeah? Okay. So today I'm talking about three themes, if we can call it that. So the first one is something that they mentioned in their Kisan joke, that it's possible to have multiple paths or multiple professional interests or multiple interests, and it's possible to achieve that. The second one is the idea of just letting go of job titles, which is, I think, something that a lot of the speakers can identify with. And something that was really inspiring for me is that most of you seem to be doing so many cool things that are sort of integrated and aligned with each other. A banker who's writing, someone who is writing who's in an MBA. And my third theme is something that I also feel was touched upon by a lot of the speakers, is why everybody's ideas in this room or everywhere else are important, and how to pursue these ideas. So, to begin with, I wanted to pose a question. So, where do you guys think that your inspirations, where are your ideas coming from, and who is defining them? So is it you? Is it what you're learning in your course? Is it your parents? Is it society? Is it what you read in the newspaper? Where is it coming from? Because some of my experiences have taught me that it is possible to align a lot of the interests that you have, which might seem really disparate or different or disconnected, and it's possible to align them in such a way that they can collaboratively work together and together through transition, which is something I'll touch upon a little further. So a really good example for this that I came across recently is an organization called Venture for America, and it's modeled on the Teach for America model, which you might be familiar with, or the Teach for India model. And so this organization places young graduates like yourselves into startup companies in cities that are re-emerging in the US. And what it's creating is, instead of a placement that would come in like an American Express placement, which someone mentioned earlier today, it'll place you in an organization that can give you the kinds of skills that you might want as a young entrepreneur, which are far less risky than maybe starting up your own business. It's creating employment instead of placing you in already existing jobs. And it's also building a better society because of the kinds of initiatives that you might be involved in. It's raising the quality of life in those re-emerging cities. So if we can, I can't see the audience, but I wanted to ask you guys a question. How many of you sitting in the audience today would like to be an entrepreneur? Or can identify with some of the skills of being an entrepreneur? No one? So you are all entrepreneurs, or you would all like to be entrepreneurs? Like to be. And how many of you, by a show of hands, know exactly where you're supposed to begin, where to go, who to ask, what kind of resources you need, where to find them? So no one. So just hold on to that thought till we get to the end. So to share a little bit about to go back, something that the founder of Venture for America said that I found a very pertinent statement. He said, young people are making life-altering decisions based upon incomplete and unclear information. So why not join a startup? Why get placed into the American Express placement? Which, when earlier asked, a lot of you made some really disgruntled sounds as to what actually working there would be like, even though you would jump at the placement opportunity. So to tell you a little bit about the work I've done in my sort of short personal journey so far, I'm also pretty young, probably very close to everyone else's age in the room. So I started by studying psychology in my undergrad because I was very interested in learning about the micro systems, why people think a certain way, why do we behave a certain way. And then I went on to work with a couple of organizations. I'll talk a bit further about the YP Foundation that was mentioned earlier, UNICEF, and also starting up my own nonprofit program. And then I went on to study public health because I felt I needed a slightly larger understanding of macro health systems, global health challenges, international development. And interspersed between each of these steps of learning was work, and either working with a startup or an already existing organization. So when I was with the YP Foundation, which is more like a youth hub, I had the opportunity to be part of the organization when they were in the very startup phase of what they were doing. So I was able to work on a range of different issues like HIV, promoting the arts, fundraisers, campaigns, like you name it, and we did it. And I also worked a lot on the back-end management systems, documentation, evaluation, the kind of boring parts of that work. And when I went on to work with UNICEF, I was able to gain a sort of first-hand observation and a first-hand experience in a lot of the most underdeveloped districts in different parts of India, and also interact with a lot of young people, much like yourselves, in those districts who were championing change in their own communities. So when I decided to go back to school again to do a master's, it was sort of because I needed time and I wanted some time to reflect on what these experiences were that I had worked with, to analyze them better, to understand them better. And one of the biggest learning achievements for me during my studies was when I did a research study that was able to statistically map out and use statistical tools to understand the impact that music had on young children. So when I was finishing school, I felt a strong sense of this feeling of like what I was supposed to do. And a lot of my colleagues at the time, they were planning their careers with like X company and X organization, big names. And I kept wondering, like, is this the kind of organization that I'm supposed to work at when I graduate from a university? And I graduated from a university, Oxford, that puts a lot of pressure on where you're supposed to go or what you're supposed to study. And I would wonder, is this the kind of organization I should work with? Is this the type of salary I'm supposed to draw at the end of it? And is this the type of city I'm supposed to work in? And it put a lot of, I think, expectation where I think contrary to what we believe where positive expectations are going to propel us further, it can often make us feel extremely inadequate. And it made me feel quite sort of out of place because I couldn't identify with some of these organizations and I couldn't find a place to fit in. And this was when it took a long time for me to make the realization that I didn't need to have a linear path and it didn't need to be one job or one specific issue in one particular place. And this is my business card. So just to explain, I took off any kind of a job title because I felt that I couldn't identify with it. And when I designed this business card, I remember thinking, oh, people are really going to think that it's not making sense, or the three terms there are very disconnected. But I was really wrong when I handed it out to people because the response that I received was actually really positive. And they said, you know, how are you forming these links? So don't assume that just because something seems a little bit disconnected or the ideas don't seem to link instantly, that it's something that's not worth pursuing or that people won't understand. So like that was another really big learning experience. So this brings me to my second point, which is letting go of job titles. And so I wanted to ask another question here, which I think, again, many of the speakers have already raised. But who you are, so if you think about that, and what you do, if they are the same, then what happens? And if who you are, and who you are in terms of maybe the things that you really enjoy doing, the things you like, the things you can identify with, the things that give you meaning in life, and what you do are different, then what happens? And the only reason that I'm asking this is because I feel at a really basic level, if one matches up with the other, it makes for sort of more meaning in what you do. If you are able to identify with who you are, then what you do might be a more accurate representation or a clearer picture of that. So I came across this really interesting infographic on LinkedIn, and it mapped and sort of analyzed about 250 million people's profiles to find the 10 hottest job titles that didn't exist 5 years ago. And in the top 10 is like number 3 is the Zumba instructor. If you know what Zumba is, it's a kind of exercise. And another one, which is number 9, is the Beachbody coach. So again, this is just trying to make the point that there's so many new kinds of ideas, new kinds of job titles out there that keep re-emerging. These didn't even exist 5 years ago. And now they are in the top 10. So on a separate sort of also funny note, that's my Instagram account. So I did this exercise, which I think if you guys try, you might really enjoy, where I try to list out the ways that I identify like what I think I am or who I am, or what are the things that I enjoy. And when I started trying to write the list, it actually took me quite a long time to put down the first couple of things up there. And I'm sure everyone else has, everyone in the room will have these things that you can identify with, which are not your job title as a banker or institutional development, which is my other job title, or co-founder. But who are you, and like what is it that you identify with? So I came across this interesting study in the Economic Journal, and it was mapping out about 130,000 people. They followed them over a few decades to see some of the major life experiences and major life events that they've had in terms of the life satisfaction. And what this study found is that for people who are unemployed, it takes them more than 5 years to recover from the feelings of what they go through when they are unemployed, which is quite a scary statistic if you think about it. So this is also a point that's been raised a lot, and something that I'm sure you must have heard from either your parents or teachers or someone around you saying, find what you're passionate about, and find your passion and do it, or find your passion and pursue it. And I find this statement very problematic, because what if you don't know what your passion is, in the singular also? And you might have multiple interests, you might have multiple passions, and these passions might keep on changing as you grow as well. So again, which is something that I feel gets sort of missed out when we talk about this find your passion. And in the age of entrepreneurship where we live now, there's so much pressure put on, he's so passionate about this and he's a high achiever in this. So like, what is it that you want to be and how do you want to be passionate? And what has worked for me personally is finding the passion in what I'm doing, and then the manner in which I'm doing it, where the passion need not always be something that's inherent or within you, but can be derived from the kinds of work that you might do or the kinds of work you find interesting. So this brings me to the last point of my talk, which is focusing again on why our ideas are important and why your ideas are important. So in the same breath that we keep talking about the age of entrepreneurship that we live in, and younger entrepreneurs that are coming up, especially speaking as a young person, in the same breath as entrepreneurship, there's very high levels of youth unemployment in the world today. And youth unemployment levels that have stayed almost static or remain the same since about 2012, and in different parts of the world, especially among young people and in different regions, especially in India. And I wanted to close my talk with a quote that I feel is quite sort of relevant to the context and where we are today and for you as young business students. So this was said by Simon Sinek. He's an Ashoka fellow. And he was talking about the difference between a small business owner and an entrepreneur. So he said the difference between small business owners and entrepreneurs is that small business owners own small businesses and entrepreneurs solve problems. So there is a distinction there. It's something to think about. And I think for me, it was very inspiring today to see and to feel that sense of community with someone who's working in film and someone who's trying to spread happiness and awareness at the same time, somebody who's working with music, someone who's working with technology, business. So whatever medium you choose and wherever you are, there's scope for you to be a leader in your community, whether it's a village or a city or a town or that region or part of the world. And I have full faith that you as a leader have the ability to make that change. So find what it is and pursue what it is, and against all odds, at the risk of saying that. So thank you.